Operation Courageous was a military operation performed by the United States Army during the Korean War designed to trap large numbers of Chinese and North Korean troops between the Han and Imjin rivers north of Seoul, opposite the South Korean First Corps. The intent of Operation Courageous was for First Corps, which was composed of the U.S. 25th and 3rd Infantry Divisions and the Republic of Korea 1st Infantry Division, to advance quickly on the North Korean and Chinese troops and reach the Imjin River with all possible speed. Maneuvering. As a first step in the attempt to block and attack the North Korean First Corps, General Matthew Ridgway on March 21, 1951, ordered his own First Corps to move forward to Line Cairo, which he extended southwestward across General Lincoln Milburn's zone through Uijeongbu to the vicinity of Hareju, on the Han River. At points generally along this line 6 to 10 miles to the north, Lincoln Milburn's patrols had made some contact with the North Korean First Corps west of Uijeongbu and the Chinese 26th Army to the east. Milburn was to occupy Line Cairo on March 22, a day ahead of the airborne landing at Munsanni, and wait for Ridgway's further order to continue north, requiring Milburn to wait stemmed from Ridgway's not yet having given the final green light to the airborne landing. Operation Tomahawk. As of March 21, Operation Tomahawk would take place only if Ridgway received assurances that weather conditions on March 23 would favor a parachute drop, and that ground troops could link up with the airborne force within 24 hours. If these assurances were forthcoming, the 187th Airborne Regimental Combat Team, with the 2D and 4th Ranger Companies attached, was to drop in the Munsanni area on the morning of March 23 and block Route 1. Milburn was to establish physical contact with and assume control of the airborne force once it was on the ground. At the same time, he was to open a general corps advance toward Line Aspin, which traced the lower bank of the Imjin River west and north of Munsanni, then sloped eastward across the corps zone to cut routes 33 and 38 miles north of Uijeongbu. Once on Aspin, Milburn was to expect Ridgway's order to continue to Line Benton, the final courageous objective line, some 10 miles farther north. Reaching Benton would carry the First Corps virtually to the 38th parallel except in the west where the final line fell off to the southwest along the Imjin, because the First Corps otherwise would have an open east flank when it moved to Line Benton. Ridgway extended its line southeastward into the 9th Corps zone, across the front of the 24th Division and about halfway across the front of the ROK 6th Division to a juncture with Line Cairo. When Ridgway ordered the First Corps to Benton, General Hodger was to send his western forces to the line to protect the First Corps flank. Meanwhile, in concert with Milburn's drive to Lines Cairo and Aspin, General William M. Hodger was to complete the occupation of his sector of Line Cairo. Elsewhere along the Army front, the 10th Corps and the ROK 3rd and 1st Corps remained under Ridgway's order of March 18 to reconnoiter the area between the Hwachon Reservoir and the East Coast. As yet, neither General Edward Armand's patrols nor those of the South Korean Corps had moved that deeply into North Korean territory. The 3 divisions of the First Corps started toward Line Cairo at 800 on March 22. The ROK 1st Division, advancing astride Route 1 in the west, overcame very light resistance and had troops on the phase line by noon. The 3D Division astride Route 3 in the center and the 25th Division on the right also met sporadic opposition but moved slowly and ended the day considerably short of the line. Meanwhile, General Milburn assembled an armored task force in Seoul for a drive up Route 1 to make the initial contact with the 187th Airborne Regimental Combat Team. If and after it dropped on Munsanni, building the force around the 6th Medium Tank Battalion, which was borrowed from the 24th Division of the 9th Corps. He added the 2D Battalion, 7th Infantry, all but one battery of the 58th Armored Field Artillery Battalion from the 3D Division, and from Corps troops he supplied a battery of the 999th Armored Field Artillery Battalion and Company A, 14th Engineer Combat Battalion. He also included 2 Bridger-laying Churchill tanks from the 29th British Brigade, which had recently been attached to the 1st Corps. Lt. Col. John S. Groden, commander of the 6th Medium Tank Battalion, was to lead the task force. Ridgway made the final decision on the airborne operation late in the afternoon of March 22 during a conference at 8th Army Main Headquarters in Taragu. General Partridge, the 5th Air Force commander, assured him that the weather would be satisfactory on the next day. Col. Gilman C. Mudgett, the new 8th Army G3, predicted that contact with the airborne unit would be made within a day's time, as Ridgway required, and also that the entire 1st Corps should be able to advance rapidly. Given these reports, Ridgway ordered the airborne landing to take place at 900 on the following day. On hearing the final word on the Munsanni drop, General Milburn directed Task Force Groden to pass through the ROK 1st Division on Line Cairo early on March 23 and proceed via Route 1 to reach the airborne troops, while his 3 divisions were to resume their advance with the objective of reaching Line Aspin. The ROK 1st Division, which would be following Task Force Groden, was to relieve the 187th Airborne Regimental Combat Team upon reaching Munsanni, and the airborne unit then was to prepare to move south and revert to 8th United States Army Reserve. First attack. On March 23, Task Force Groden, which was completely motorized, passed through the ROK 1st Division shortly after 700. No Chinese forces opposed the armored column as it moved ahead of the South Koreans, but within minutes the 3rd tank in column hit a mine while bypassing a destroyed bridge of the small Changnung River. The task force was held up while engineers removed a dozen other mines from the bypass, proceeding slowly from that point with a mine detector team leading the way afoot. Colonel Groden's column moved only a mile to the village of Sinwon-ni before encountering more mines. When the 187th Airborne Regimental Combat Team began landing at Munsanni at 900, Groden's task force was at a halt some 15 miles to the south. C-46 Commandos and C-119 flying boxcars of the 315th Air Division had begun lifting the airborne troops from the Taragu airfield shortly after 700, all heading initially for a rendezvous point over the Yellow Sea west of the objective area. The second serial of aircraft, with the 1st Battalion of the 187th aboard, was in flight only briefly before engine trouble in the lead plane forced the pilot to return to Taragu for a replacement aircraft. The combat team landed before the new lead plane, whose passengers included the 1st Battalion commander, could reach Munsanni. The drop, as a result, did not come off entirely as planned. General Bowen, commander of the 187th, had designated 2 drop zones. One about a mile northeast of Munsanni at 37 degrees 51 minutes 36 seconds north, 126 degrees 48 minutes 16 seconds east, 37.86000 degrees north, 126.80444 degrees east, 37.86000, 126.80444. Another about 3 miles southeast of town at 37 degrees 49 minutes 32 seconds north, 126 degrees 49 minutes 14 seconds east, 37.82556 degrees north, 126.82056 degrees east, 37.82556, 126.82056. The 1st Battalion was to land in the lower zone, the remainder of the combat team in the one to the north. Bowen's plan went awry when the leaderless second serial of planes mistakenly followed the first and dropped the 1st Battalion, also in the northern zone. The 2D Battalion with the 2D Ranger Company followed not long after, then the 674th Airborne Field Artillery Battalion, and at 1000 the Artillery Heavy Drop. In the brief interval between the drops of the 1st and 2D Battalions, General Ridgway arrived by L-19, landing on a road between Munsanni and the northern drop zone. En route, he had flown over Task Force Groden, then held up at Sinwanee, a fact he passed to General Bowen. Shortly after 1000, Ridgway saw a single stick of paratroops jump from a plane over the lower drop zone. The replacement plane carrying the 1st Battalion commander and party had finally reached Munsanni, and its passengers had jumped in the correct zone, not knowing that they would be the only troops in the area. To the north, resistance in and immediately around the drop zone was minor and sporadic, amounting to a few small groups of North Koreans and a meager amount of fire from mortars located somewhere to the north. Overcrowding caused by the 1st Battalion's misdirected drop complicated the 3D Battalion's assembly, but units managed to sort themselves out and secure the borders of the drop zone. An unexpected annoyance was created by civilians who appeared in the drop zone and began carrying away parachutes. Shots fired over their heads ended the attempted theft. Against moderate but scattered opposition, the 2D Battalion proceeded to occupy heights northeast of the drop zone, and under the command of its executive officer, the 1st Battalion, less Company B, moved into the ground to the north and northwest, clearing Munsanni itself in the process. Company B went on a rescue mission to the southern drop zone after learning that the command group of the 1st Battalion had come under fire on Hill 216, overlooking the drop zone from the northwest. Company B forced the Chinese troops off the hill, allowing its survivors to withdraw to the southwest, and reach the drop zone by 1500. The rescue force and the battalion command group arrived at the regimental position to the north about 2 hours later. By that time, Bowen's forces had secured all assigned objectives. Battle casualties among the airborne troops were light, totaling 19. Jump casualties were higher at 84, but almost half of these returned to duty immediately after treatment. Chinese casualties included 136 dead counted on the field and 149 taken captive. Estimated losses raised the total considerably higher. Prisoner interrogation indicated that the Chinese forces who had been in the objective area were from the 36th Regiment of the North Korean 19th Division and had numbered between 300 and 500. Most of the remainder of the North Korean First Corps apparently had withdrawn above the Imjin well before the airborne landing. Link up. The point of Task Force Groden reached Munsanni at 1830 on March 23, but the remainder of the extended column took several hours longer. The force encountered no Chinese positions along Route 1 but was kept to an intermittent crawl by having to lift or explode over 150 live mines, some of them booby-trapped, and almost as many dummy mines, including a 5-mile stretch of buried sea rations and beer cans. Casualties were few, but 4 tanks were disabled by mines. As the last of these tanks hit a mine a mile below Munsanni, the explosion attracted artillery fire that damaged 2 more. The tail of the task force finally arrived at the airborne position at 700 on March 24. General Milburn's orders to the 187th for operations on March 24 called only for patrolling. Having been given control of Task Force Groden by Milburn, General Bowen built his principal patrols around Task Force Groden's tanks and sent him to investigate ferry sites on the Imjin and to check Route 2Y, an earthen road running east from Munsanni, as far as the village of Sinchurun, 10 miles away. One patrol made contact while checking an Imjin ferry site and ford 10 miles northeast of Munsanni. 6 Chinese were killed and 22 captured. The patrol suffered no casualties, but a tank had to be destroyed after it got bogged down at a stream crossing while approaching the Jin. A few rounds of artillery fire meanwhile fell in the northern drop zone but caused no casualties. The ROK 1st Division had advanced steadily toward Munsanni without enemy contact. Early on March 24, Task Force Boone, a division armored column consisting of Company C, 64th Tank Battalion, Pake's Tank Destroyer Battalion, and two of his engineer platoons, stepped ahead of the division and reached the 187th Airborne Regimental Combat Team at mid-morning. By day's end, the remainder of the division occupied a line extending from positions athwart Route 1 about 3 miles below Munsanni northeastward, to Pobwani, a village on lateral Route 2Y 6 miles east of Munsanni area. General Pake relieved General Bowen of responsibility for the Munsanni area at 1700 and placed Task Force Boone in position just above the town. The lack of resistance to the wider sweep of the ROK 1st Division's advance confirmed that the bid to block and attack the North Korean 1st Corps had been futile. To the east, the fact that the Chinese 26th Army still had forces deployed to delay the advance of the 3D and 25th Divisions had become equally clear. On the I Corps' right, the 25th Division had run into a large number of minefields and small but well-entrenched Chinese groups employing small arms, machine guns, and mortar fire. At nightfall on March 24, General Bradley's forces held positions almost due west of Uijeongbu in the 3D Division's zone at Corps Center. Chinese defense and retreat. Somewhat unexpectedly, the 3D Division had come up against unusually strong Chinese positions. On March 23, General Sol's forces had occupied the Uijeongbu area with little difficulty. First to enter the town was Task Force Hawkins, built around the bulk of the 64th Tank Battalion and two platoons of tanks from each of the 15th and 65th Infantry Regiments. Reaching Uijeongbu about 900 and finding it undefended, the task force reconnoitred north several miles on Route 33 before returning to the division position. Mines disabled two tanks, but otherwise the task force made no contact, though it thus appeared that the 3D Division could continue to move forward with relative ease. General Sol's forces came under heavy fire when they resumed their attack on the morning of March 24. The Chinese had organized strong positions in Hill 468, rising 3 miles northwest of Uijeongbu, and Hill 337, about a mile north and slightly east of town. From these positions they were in fair condition to block advance on the Route 33 axis to the north and over Route 3 leading out of Uijeongbu to the northeast. On the division's right, the 15th Infantry eventually managed to clear Hill 337 on the 24th, but the 65th Infantry on the left failed in an all-day attempt to force the Chinese from the Hill 468. General Milburn viewed the situation at Corps Center as an opportunity to trap and destroy the Chinese holding up the 3D Division. After General Sol's forces encountered the strong Chinese positions on the morning of March 24, he ordered General Bowen to pull in his patrols and prepare the 187th Airborne Regimental Combat Team for an eastward attack on the Route 2Y axis. The objective was high ground abutting Route 33 about 10 miles north of Uijeongbu, thus just above the trace of Line Aspin, whence Bowen was to prevent the Chinese in front of the 3D Division from withdrawing over Route 33. The 3D Division was to continue its northward attack in the meantime and eventually drive the Chinese against Bowen's position. General Bowen started east at 1800, intending to march as far as Sinchuran during the night and open his attack the following morning. From Task Force Groden, Company CE was the only unit of the 6th Tank Battalion able to move at 1800. All other companies of the battalion had too little fuel after patrolling and were to catch up with Bowen's column after being resupplied from Seoul. Task Force Grodin now also was short the 2D Battalion, 7th Infantry, which had been sent back to the 3D Division. A force shaped around the tanks of Company C led the way towards Sincheon. But after 7 miles, as Bowen's column moved through a system of ridges, landslides twice trapped the leading tanks, and in the second instance no bypass could be found. As engineers tried to open the road, rain began to fall and became steadily heavier. With the rain making a poor road even worse, Bowen ordered the tanks back to Munsan-ni. After the engineers had cleared the road sufficiently, his remaining forces proceeded to Sincheon, arriving about 600 on March 25. Running into small arms, machine guns, and mortar fire from positions on several nearer hills and hampered by a continuing driving rain. The two battalions at day's end were some 2 miles short of Hill 228, and Route 33 remained available to the Chinese in front of the 3D Division if they chose to withdraw over it. Withdrawal seemed to be the Chinese intention. The 3D Division met only light resistance when it resumed its attack from the south on March 25 and advanced 2 miles beyond the hills where strong Chinese positions had delayed it the day before. The tank company of the 65th Infantry meanwhile moved ahead on Route 3X, a secondary road angling northwest off Route 33 to Sincheon, in an attempt to contact the 187th Airborne Regimental Combat Team. Mines along the road disabled 4 tanks and kept the company from reaching its destination, but it encountered no enemy positions. The withdrawal of the Chinese delaying forces was confirmed on March 26 when the 3D Division and the 25th Division as well moved forward against little or no opposition. To the north, the Chinese continued to oppose the efforts of the 187th Airborne Regimental Combat Team to capture Hill 228. Using Route 33 and a lesser road to the west, 2 tank columns from the 3D Division joined Bowen's forces during the afternoon of March 26, but even with armored support, it was 900 the following day before the 187th captured Hill 228. Using the remainder of March 27 for reorganization and resupply, General Bowen attacked the heights on the east side of Route 33 early on March 28 and occupied them after an all-day battle to eliminate stiff resistance. The 15th and 65th Infantry Regiments of the 3D Division meanwhile reached the airborne forces. The 1st Battalion of the 15th Infantry making first contact late in the afternoon of March 27. Despite General Milburn's hopes for the operation, the 2 regiments drove no forces into the guns of the airborne unit. Either the Chinese resisting the eastward attack of the 187th had kept Route 33 open long enough for the forces withdrawing before the 3D Division to pass north, or the withdrawing Chinese units had used another road, perhaps Route 3. Moving through spotty resistance, the 25th Division on the right had kept pace with the 3D Division, and by nightfall on March 28 both were on or above Line Aspin.